The operation started on June 13th, 613, which is a very important number in Judaism. It's the number of commandments in the Jewish Bible, 613 commandments in the Mishnah Torah, where they lay them all out. You almost wonder then, is the next step a play for the temple? Once Iran is gone, with Hamas defeated, with the Palestinian question a domestic issue for Israel, does this pave the way for an annexation of the West Bank, Jerusalem, and the rebuilding of a third temple? I mean, for anybody that's a Christian, whether you're Catholic or Protestant, whatever sect of Christian you are, the idea that the temple could be rebuilt is a very ominous signal of the kind of biblical times that we're living in.
Bet HaMikdash, probably mispronouncing it. That's the Hebrew term for the temple, the third temple. We are doing this so we can rebuild the temple. So it just couldn't be clearer. Why are we doing this? To rebuild the third temple.
Hey guys, Rafi here from the Endgame Investor, and I've got a pretty interesting show today. So we have today two rabbis, Rabbi Tuli Wise of Israel 365, which is a media forum for Jewish and Christian Zionists to discuss ideas, and Rav Avi Grossman, the associate rabbi of Machon Shiloh and the compiler of Haggadah Pesach, which is a Pesach Haggadah that will, God willing, be used when the Paschal sacrifice, when the Korban Pesach is reinstituted. So the idea that I had today was the discussion of the Third Temple has risen in global media. We've heard Tucker Carlson talk about it. We've heard Nick Fuentes talk about it, not very positively. And there are developments going on Har HaBayit on the Temple Mount in Israel. There are more visitors, but there's more activity up there. There are Jews praying up there, along with Muslims, of course, as they always do. So given that it's in the news, I wanted to have a discussion on possible ideas on the Third Temple. Could it be rebuilt? How could it be rebuilt? What would be a good way for that to happen? And is it something that Jews should even do? We'll start with Rabbi Wise, Rabbi Tuli Wise of Israel 365. I hear you have some radical ideas on how the temple should be rebuilt. What are those ideas?
I hope that, I don't know, I think a lot about the Beis HaMikdash and about, I grew up in an Orthodox educational system, an Orthodox family, and kind of just assumed that the Beis HaMikdash was supposed to fall from the sky. I think that's what we were all taught. And only, as I kind of got a little bit more knowledgeable and educated, did I start to understand, though, that the Beis HaMikdash is something that we have to build. Like any other building, it has to be built by people. And obviously there is the Shekhinah, the Hashem's presence is going to come from the sky, but the actual work has to be from us. And as somebody who has always identified with the religious Zionist stream of Judaism, where I think uniquely to religious Zionism, there's this idea of active involvement and hishtadlus when it comes to Geula. So we really take it, all the way going back to Rav Kook, this idea that even though we don't understand Hashem's ways, we have to play an active role. And so, for example, Rav Kook was very supportive of secular Zionists, even though at the time most of the Rabbanim were very against Zionism and said it's a heresy and it's avodah zarah. Rav Kook said, no, this is part of Hashem's plan, and even if we don't understand it. And so
Rav Weiss, can I just interrupt you for a second for the people that don't understand these terms? Avodah zarah is idolatry, and hishtadlus means trying hard. Basically, the point being that we have to expend our own effort to rebuild the temple. It's not just going to fall from the sky, is what he's talking about.
Right. And so, so Rav Kook was encouraging Jews to come back to Israel. And so religious Zionism as an ideology, which comes from Rav Kook, does believe that we have to take the initiative to rebuild Israel and to bring about the fulfillment of prophecy. And so also when it comes to the Third Temple, it's not something that we believe is going to fall from the sky. It's something that we have to figure out how to bring about in our own generation, even today, tomorrow, as soon as possible. And therefore, it has to be done with a lot of geopolitical sensitivity. You have to read the cards and read the tea leaves to understand, well, how could we have a Beis Hamikdash today? Could we, could we just do whatever we want? We don't have sovereignty up there right now. And that's, it's not, we've given away, the Israeli government has given away sovereignty to the Jordanian Waqf in 1967. And so we don't have the ability to do whatever we want on the Temple Mount right now. There's this sort of status quo. But how are we going to bring about the Beis Hamikdash? I think that it really could emerge sooner than we might have thought, faster than we had thought, if it comes about through the Abraham Accords. There's great enthusiasm right now for the Abraham Accords, which is Israel building relationships with Arab countries or with Muslim countries, through a greater, sense of the regional stability and working closely with America. And the driving force behind the Abraham Accords is America. And so we have this very unusual opportunity to include the building of the Beis Hamikdash in the Abraham Accords. And that's what I think that we need to be having conversations. So, Rafi, I'm very grateful that you put together this conversation because I would love to hear your thoughts and Rabbi Grossman's thoughts about how we could build the Beis Hamikdash perhaps sooner than we had imagined as part of the next wave of the Abraham Accords, or perhaps the next phase of the war or the winding down of the war could lead to the unexpected in the building of the third Beis Hamikdash.
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to raise one point. Talking about building the Beis Hamikdash in the context of the Abraham Accords, to me that seems to conflict with the sources that we have in Ezra and Nehemiah, where specifically the Shomronim, the Samaritans, asked to participate in the building of the Beis Hamikdash, of the Second Temple, and they were rejected by the returning Jews, by Shivat Zion, and from there, a huge conflict ensued. You could see that as negative. Maybe your opinion is that they should have just allowed the Shomronim or the Samaritans to participate in the rebuilding, but that doesn't seem to be Ezra or Nehemiah's position.
Well, it's funny you bring Ezra, because the beginning of Sefer Ezra talks about who was the initial one to encourage the building of the Beis Hamikdash is Koresh. Koresh was a non-Jewish king who encouraged Ezra to build the Beis Hamikdash. And so I think that, yes, you're right. The Beis Hamikdash is something that is extremely holy, and we have to be extremely careful. But at the same time, pretending that it's 100% a Jewish initiative without any involvement of the non-Jewish world is also not the way that the second Beis Hamikdash was built, and not even the way that the first Beis Hamikdash was built. Shlomo Melech also was working with Chira Melech Tzur to build Hiram, king of Tyre, to build the first temple. So there was a relationship between the Jews who were in Israel and the non-Jewish regional powers at the same time, which is something that, then again, it doesn't mean that we're going to work with every non-Jew to build the Beis Hamikdash. The Shomronim were not an appropriate partner, and I don't think that, for example, I don't think the Palestinian terrorists are going to be a partner in the building of the third Beis Hamikdash either, and I don't think that idolatrous Christians are going to be a partner in the building of the third temple either. But we do have to find the non-Jews who believe in the God of Israel and partner with them if we are realistic about it. Again, Hashem could do anything. It could come from the sky. I could be wrong about that. It could come from the sky, and I'll be the first to be excited about that version as well. But assuming that is something that we have to take initiative, we have to understand that this is a big deal and a big building project. It's not like building a shul in Ramat Beit Shemesh where you don't necessarily have to clear it with the foreign governments. This is something that I think would have to be done where the world would be excited about it, not just tolerate it, but welcoming of the Beis Hamikdash.
Okay, Rav Grossman, what are your views on how we can get this project going to build the Beis Hamikdash, to build the third temple, or a restoration of the second temple? There's slight differences in those approaches. And what is your response to Rav Wise?
Well, first, I'd like to say where we might have common ground. I'm also very much in favor of the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash. I think it's high time that there be this discussion, and the fact that our enemies both within the land of Israel and abroad, are also speaking about this, and that they're alarmed is a positive sign. It means that there's getting attention. Perhaps uh, I I was born 15 years after the Six Day War, and it's been quite a while. It's been the better part of 6 decades that Am Yisrael has sort of been dragging its feet with this momentous and critical project. We have to have the Beis Hamikdash. We have to have I should use the secular terms. We have to have the Holy Temple. We have to have the temple service. That is something we are looking forward to. Ostensibly, we've been praying for it. We've been asking God for it, and we have to do it. I also agree that perhaps most of the performance of the commandments is dependent on our effort. God wants us to do it and not rely on miraculous means of it coming about, specifically with regards to the temple, the rebuilding of the temple, previous incarnations of the temple and the sanctuary. It was always done by men. And we've spoken enough about this. Have a lot of videos. That idea is quite weak. Now that being said, I wanted to disagree a little bit about the idea of sovereignty. I find it kind of funny that people used to say up until recently that if, let's say, the people of Israel, the government of Israel were to do X, Y, and Z, it would cause some sort of amazing backlash, some terrible, violent backlash from the world, whoever it is, ostensibly our enemies, and also those who are supposed to be our allies would slowly turn on us. And instead, we've seen that apparently those who want to destroy Am Yisrael, that is the people of Israel and the state of Israel, do not need Jews to start building a temple. They've been going about it just fine. It turns out the people in Gaza were planning to kill us all along, and the Iranians were planning to kill us all along. And they have many allies who would be happy to see us disappear. And it's not because we were building a temple or we did anything. It's because they hate us and all that. So with regards to sovereignty on the Temple Mount, the state of Israel does control the Temple Mount. They allow Jordanian people to be there, but the Jordanians are unarmed. It's Israeli security forces that control, I guess, as the libertarians have it, they have the monopoly on violence on the Temple Mount. And if whoever is calling the shots, the same people who are preventing, let's say, the Jews from praying the way they want to on the Temple Mount, and have now basically banished everybody, Muslim, Jew, secular person alike, from the Temple Mount, whoever's controlling the place could tomorrow just say, you know what, we'll let the Jews do what they want, and we'll no longer tolerate the presence of the Muslim and the Waqf authorities authorities that are there. I don't know where the Jordanians come in. I think it's almost a joke. It's like a puppet, a straw man that has been placed on Temple Mount. It as a conspiracy, and I'd like to actually build on this, I guess, in a different time, that in order to keep the status quo the way it is, they're telling everybody the Jordanians are in charge. What are we supposed to do? But I do believe that there is what to do. And I guess also we have slight common ground on this thing. We have this first temple precedent and a second temple precedent. You guys said, well, in the book of Ezra, it talks about, I think actually before Ezra and Nehemiah showed up, Zerubbabel's time. Yehoshua ben Yotzadok and Zerubbabel were the leaders of the Jewish people. They wanted to get a temple built. And it's right there in the 4th chapter. It says that they refused the help of the Samaritans and the other adjacent anti-Semites, as it was in that era. And they said, it's not for you to build a temple, it's for us. Yet, Solomon, one of the first things he did was enlist the help of Hiram, the king of Tyre, to help him build the first temple. So what's going on here? Actually, the prophets included the clue, when do we want, I guess, Gentile involvement, and when do we not? By the way, Tzor is technically part of the land of Israel. That's Phoenicia, Tyre. That was supposed to be part of our land, but apparently, even in David's time, he was able to tolerate people like Hiram. Why? Because it says that Ki ohev hayah Hiram l'David kol hayamim. Hiram was literally, the word is lover, but like also is the translation of the word ohev in biblical Hebrew, as it is in modern Hebrew. Hiram was an ally of David all the days. It means for a long time. Whereas before Zerubbabel refused the proposal of the Samaritans, etc., it says, "Vayishmu sarei Yehuda v'Yamin kivnei hagolah bonim eichal." The troublers of Judah and Benjamin heard that the returnees from the exile were building the temple. So when it comes to, are we going to involve foreigners? Foreigners, I mean non-Jews, in this project, we first have to ascertain, well, are they ohev or are they at SAR? We have to know, are they on our side or not? With regards to the Abraham Accords and other treaties, we have to watch out with whom we are making these treaties and what are their intentions, and even who among us has created this alliance. The formative event of my childhood was watching the signing of the Oslo Accords on TV. They took us out of our modern Orthodox elementary school classrooms and brought us to the auditorium to watch the signing on TV. And I was shocked. And I told my parents then, I still say it now, that I don't understand what was going on there. That was Arafat. Arafat's job, his declared goal in life, was to destroy us in our state. And the Jews with whom he was signing this treaty were Jews with whom politics, religious, anything, I do not agree with them. They were men of the left and who were secular and didn't have the right ideas about how to go about running a state. And the one who was mediating it, the arbitrator of this agreement, was Bill Clinton, who is still a manuvel and a disgusting person, and with whom I disagree. So I would not like the Oslo Accords. If perhaps we had some other treaty, maybe I don't think, I'm not a big fan of Trump as a person. I'm not the biggest fan of the Abraham Accords. I don't know what we've relinquished to them. I'm not a big fan of the current prime minister. I don't know if that type of treaty is the right thing. The Torah prohibits treaties with the wrong people. Yet we see that Solomon also had alliances with others. It has to be done in the right way. It has to be done by the right people with the right people for the right intentions. So I am, I guess, skeptical that the current Abraham Accords, even if they're not as bad as the Oslo Accords, I don't think that they're necessarily leading anywhere. Although I do not think that it's beyond beyond halacha, beyond reality, that we could, in theory, ally ourselves with other powers to, I guess, achieve peace and greater economic prosperity, and even rebuild the temple. It's technically possible. I just don't see it with the current people.
So let me go back to Rev Wise. Rev Wise, you have said, I think, that in the context of the Abraham Accords, you would support the building of a church on Har HaBayit on the Temple Mount. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you meant, but
exactly what I meant. No.
So okay.
What I said was that, you have in the UAE a campus which could be a model for the Beis HaMikdash, because the UAE has this Abrahamic family campus, I think it's called the Abrahamic House, which is basically a mosque and a church in a synagogue in the UAE, which is very, very interesting because it is a Muslim country, and usually Jews and Christians are second-class citizens, but because the UAE is at the forefront of Arab or Muslim tolerance and moderation, so they symbolically built this campus to show the region, really, that Islam is a tolerant religion, and therefore they built a synagogue and a church, which is very unusual and is something that I think is commendable and something that we have to be grateful for and appreciate, that we really need the Muslim world to become less radical and more moderate. And so it's a great sign that they did that. And there's lessons for the Jewish people as well, because I think that the Jewish people, we have this notion that Christianity is avodah zarah, because the Rambam says it's avodah zarah, and a lot of Rishonim say it's avodah zarah. But at the same time, so many of the many modern poskim say, well, the Rambam was living 900 years ago in medieval Spain, and he was talking about medieval Catholicism, and that's not the same religion that we have today, and therefore Christianity today, a lot of Rishonim would say, is not avodah zarah and is shituf, and therefore for the Jewish people, we don't really think too much about like what exactly is Christianity and halachically, and there are a lot of different streams and denominations within Christianity. Some of them for sure are still pagan idolaters, for sure, worshiping statues and believing, in a human God. But a lot of Christian denominations have moved away from those pagan influences and are much closer to pure monotheism and And if anything, if they're practicing what's called shituf, which is not appropriate for Jewish people, but for Christians is a more acceptable form of worship, right? So my point was that the Jewish people have to be creative and open-minded and tolerant about rethinking what could be done. And the question was if the journalist asked what happens if a missile hits the mosque or the Dome of the Rock.
Oh, you
Well,
mean that was what Tucker Carlson was asking, right? Yeah, I think.
yeah. So, anyways, so my point was that it says in Yeshayahu that the Beis Hamikdash is supposed to be a house of prayer for all nations. Beis Tefillah Yikar L'chol Ha'amim, a house of prayer for all nations. And so I was thinking like maybe that model could be relevant for us today. And again, I think that a lot of people I understand would say, what are you talking about? No, the Beis Hamikdash is only going to be for Jewish people, right? It's only going to be for Jews. But it's not necessarily the case. And we have to be thinking creatively about the parameters of what exactly the Beis Hamikdash is. Is it a shul or it's not a shul at all? I've heard, people say, no, it's not a shul at all. It's something totally different. So these are important conversations. I certainly don't have the monopoly on ideas on this, but I'm willing to think out of the box. Obviously, it has to be done completely halachically, 100%, kosher. But at the same time, I think we as Orthodox Jews have to be willing to be humble enough to understand that maybe it's not going to be exactly the way that we had been taught or had thought about. And, for example, if we thought that it was going to come from the sky, and now we're saying, oh no, it's not going to come from the sky. So that's a big shift in our thinking. And so we have to be more creative and tolerant and innovative if we really want to build it quickly and not wait for 100 years or 1,000 years.
Okay, so basically the bottom line is no church on the Temple Mount. Just something similar to that, like just specifically what is it? Is it just the temple, or are there other denomination buildings there? Like,
I don't know. I think that, if it was up to us and we could build whatever, and Rabbi Grossman made a good point that our enemies are always threatening World War III, right? No matter what we do, it's going to lead to World War III, and it never leads to World War III. And, there are a lot of bluster and there are a lot of talk, and we're in charge and we could do whatever we want and let the chips fall where they may. And I kind of hear that. I wish that it was so simple. I wish that, but I don't know if it's really quite that simple. I don't know if I don't even know if we want to build a Beis Hamikdash right now. If you were to have a vote with, a referendum in the Israeli people, and you would ask them, like, our enemies are calling this, Hamas is calling this the Al-Aqsa flood. They launched their attack on October 7th in order to liberate Al-Aqsa. And therefore, they pose this question to the population of Israel. Therefore, in order to defeat the radical nightmare aspirations of our enemies, we are going to bulldoze the Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuild the Third Temple. I can't imagine more than 10% of Israelis agreeing with that. So the real problem is not Jordan. The real problem is not even, Donald Trump or our own prime minister. The real problem is the Israeli people. We have to educate the Jews in Israel. What are we missing? And what are we lacking? And what are we trying to build? And only when we start educating our own people about what the Beis Hamikdash is supposed to be and what we're missing, will we go from maybe 10% of the people who want a Beis Hamikdash today to 15% and to 20%. And I think even if you had 25% of the population, that might actually be enough to build the third Beis Hamikdash. You don't necessarily need 100%. I don't even know if you need 51% to get the ball rolling, but I don't think we're there yet. I think that the real problem is in our own community, we're not talking about it enough, which again, Rafi, I want to, again, thank you for bringing this conversation together, because these are the conversations. I might not be right. I probably am not right. That's fine. That's fine. Maybe Rabbi Grossman has it perfectly laid out. I don't know. But these are the kind of things that probably not. Probably nobody really does. And only if we bring the right people together who want it to happen, who aren't just going to shoot down every idea because it's not according to their version that they thought about in the 5th grade, right? That's definitely not how we're going to get to a Beis HaMikdash anytime soon.
Right, one quick question, and then we'll go back to Rav Grossman. Rav Wise, do you go up to Har HaBayit to pray there?
So I never did, because all of my teachers said it was prohibited. But then when I moved to Israel, so after being here for a few years, so my rabbi changed his mind, and he said he looked into the issue, and now he originally thought it was not encouraged. Now he thought it was very important to do so. So I started going up in the last couple of years.
Oh, good. Okay. I think Rav Grossman will be pretty happy about that. So, Rav Grossman, considering Rav Wise's words here, how do you think we can get this done? How do we get to that critical, I think 20% threshold? I think that's a pretty good number, because according to Chazal, according to the sages, only 20% of us left Mitzrayim, left Egypt, and the rest died there. That's not the literal interpretation, but it is a way of reading it. So I think that 20% mark, where 20% of the Jews would want to do this, that could be a tipping point. I'm not sure exactly, but Reb Grossman, what say you?
So I say I couldn't agree with Rabbi Weiss more regarding the need for education. We have to educate the Jews regarding the Temple Mount. A great economist, whom he used to write things. I used to read everything he would write, and also listen to everything he says. He was discussing his experience going up to the Temple Mount on Chol Hamoed, on that wooden bridge, the boardwalk that goes up from what's called Shar Halel, above the women's section of the Kotel Plaza on Chol Hamoed, and he saw the amazing crowds, thousands and thousands of Jews there to attend the services in Chol Hamoed. I think it was for Birkat Kohanim. Easily, maybe 100,000 Jews were there, but how many were actually going up to the Temple Mount? It was just a few. And they didn't understand that this is the holiday. This is a pilgrimage. We're supposed to be going there. And we have to get more Jews on board. I think that the Rambam has it correct. The first stage is not, let's say, appointing a king. Who's supposed to appoint a king for Am Yisrael before we have even a temple? He said you need a king in order to get over all the machlukas, the possible disputes that's going to be involved. So too, we need rabbinic enforcement. We need rabbinic authority, what people refer to as a Sanhedrin, which is a later Greek word just to describe the fact that we had 70 elders all the time calling the shots. Just like having a king is important, we need a unification of halachic authority. Just to answer the very basic questions. All that which you gentlemen brought up about, let's say, alternative places of worship, what could something not Judaism, even within the Temple Mount, I think that we can start mining the Talmud and the poskim for precedent regarding those questions. But more importantly, and this is something that Rav Kapach used to emphasize, once we have a Sanhedrin, we don't really look into the old codes. The Torah is living. They reinterpret, and they can make decisions then and there on a vote. I'm not saying that it would be willy-nilly, and I don't think that they would be petty about this, but I'm saying that when it comes to these questions, the most basic questions, just about deciding how to go about reinstituting the temple service, we think it's so simple. We just open up a Talmud or a Rambam and we'll do it. We don't even know exactly how to make the Big Day Kahuna without entering great disputes that have not been resolved. The Sanhedrin has to resolve everything. It could very well be they'll decide, not like the Rambam, not like the Ravid, not like Rashi. They will decide something else. So with regards to all these things, we first need to get our act together and have some sort of mechanism, a proper Torah mechanism to resolve all these things. I'd also like to say, yes, I heard personally from Rabbi Rabinovich, of blessed memory, Rabbi Nochum Rabinovich. He told me personally that he believed that certain forms of Christianity are no longer idolatrous. I asked him, yeah, but Maimonides wrote not just Christianity. Maimonides wrote more specifically all sects of Christianity. You could say, yeah, but he was unfamiliar with modern sects. That could be true, and it is true that others agree with him. I am frightened, though, of agreeing with him, because to go and say that suddenly that which was idolatry is no longer idolatry, that's the type of thing we should be asking a Sanhedrin before we act on it. Also, the Shituf thing, that's a big machlokas Rishonim. according to the Rambam, shituf is even forbidden. That is, worshiping the true God in conjunction with other gods, which is way some people define Christianity. Remember, we're Jews talking about their religion as though we're experts on their religion. But that type of issue would also need a real Sanhedrin to resolve. So too, with regards to kosher places of worship, assuming you have another kosher religion, well, I think that what Isaiah was getting at, a place of prayer for all nations, is similar to what the sages were saying. If the nations were to, let's say, want to bring sacrifice in our temple, they have to do it according to our Torah standards. If they want to bring sacrifice to God anywhere else in the world, it's a lower Noahide standard. And this is a sugya in there in Zavachim. It's in the Tosefta also. Maimonides does touch on this, although he leaves out a lot of the details. But the point is, if we wanted to have a place, let's say close to our own temple, where the Gentiles could do like they do, we'd first have to make sure that it's quote unquote kosher by our standards. I believe that it's the sages of the Second Temple times already made an enactment that even within the temple precincts, Gentiles, as non-Jews, could not go beyond a certain point, what we call the chel, and they even discovered the old plaque that they put there. It's engraved in stone. It's still in the Temple Mount. It's in the museum now. It was it Latin or Greek? It was Latin, because I was able to read it. And Latin characters are more decipherable to Americans than, let's say, Greek. So there was already an enactment that Gentiles couldn't go beyond a certain point, let alone build their own structure somewhere there to worship the way they choose. I think that I would imagine, I would hope that whatever they would do in Jerusalem or even the land of Israel would be vetted and approved by our Sanhedrin. As you may or may not know, even the presence of Gentiles within the land of Israel, strictly according to halacha, according to Maimonides, is forbidden unless we're already running our country the way we're supposed to be, with Shemitah and Yovel, the Jubilee year. Those are all very difficult questions. Just go and say that perhaps we are going to now allow the Gentiles a place of worship, whatever it might be, a church. I don't know. I'm skeptical and I'm very cautious about it. Yeah, you have a say about that?
I want to jump in because you said a lot of really great things and I appreciate it. And I think that there's this balance between what we would like to see, right? And if the government were to start turning to the rabbis and saying, okay, we're going to turn over these issues to you to make. But unfortunately, what we've seen in the last number of years is that when the rabbis get involved with issues that are sensitive to Israeli domestic and to domestic affairs, they kind of make it worse. And certainly when it would come to foreign affairs, I don't think anyone in the Knesset would say, why don't we turn this over to the rabbis? I think that if anything, the rabbis unfortunately have shown that they're having a hard enough time showing the right kind of wise leadership when it even comes to relatively simple domestic issues like Shabbos and buses on Shabbos and kosher standards. And so I think that it's a little bit far-fetched to think that we're going to be assigning a Sanhedrin anytime soon to be deciding on the most sensitive geopolitical issues that could affect the entire world. Why could it affect the entire world? Because, while we're going to do what we need to do and not be afraid of this sort of ever-present threat of World War III, but at the same time, there's close to 2 billion Muslims, and so we got to be, we have to make sure that we could defend ourselves if there was, God forbid, that doomsday scenario. And so therefore, this isn't something that we could. Yes, we need to be talking about it amongst ourselves, but in a base medrash. But at the same time, ultimately, because we don't have ultimate responsibility, certainly when it comes to the protection of the nation. So this isn't going to be something that it's something that if the religious community wants a voice, and there will be the Beis HaMikdash will only come about if the religious people come up and they say, it's time to build the Beis HaMikdash, which right now, again, even the religious community is not saying. So I think that what we need to do is to find, let's call it 10%, even though I made up that number, but let's organize the 10% and let's try to get one version of the Beis HaMikdash that we can get the most amount of Jews to get behind. And that is, whether or not is there going to be animal sacrifice or maybe not immediately. maybe eventually to have animal sacrifice, but maybe that should not be the first thing that we talk about doing. Maybe there's other things that we want to get people excited about that is a little bit more of a consensus building issue than animal sacrifice, for example. Those are the kinds of things that we need to be talking about. Let's start building consensus amongst the Jewish people, and then let's get a party in the Knesset to promise that if they are elected, they will make sure to deliver on those promises in the next Knesset. Happens to be that there's going to be an election, a Knesset election this year. So we have a few weeks, maybe a couple of months to get our act together and to start getting as many Israeli voters on board as possible. Find a sympathetic Knesset member who is on board with all of this, and let's get that guy elected, and let's make sure that he becomes a minister in the government, so he actually has authority. And there's a number of ministries that could move the needle on this entire conversation. And I think that that's the way to start going about doing it before there's a lot we could disagree about, the dimensions and where exactly on Har Bayit and who should be allowed and who should not be allowed. Those are the kinds of things that we're not going to get anywhere if we start fighting over what we disagree on. We have to start recognizing what are the very, very basic parameters that we can agree on. Let's get as many people excited about this vision as possible, and let's all agree to vote for that Knesset party who is going to include it in their platform.
I think you would agree with a lot of what Rabbi Wise said, and some of it you wouldn't. But I think what he's saying, in my own words, is that we can start with menachos, we can start with meal offerings or something like that, something less threatening to the world in his view. But why not start with Korban Pesach, or at least the one mitzvah, the one commandment that we have or one of the two positive commandments that we have, that if we don't do it, we're chayav karetz, we're chayav excision from the people. And do you have any response to Rav Wise's words on the current rabbinic leadership and handing decisions over to the rabbinate might not be such a good idea?
Well, two things. Rabbis and politics don't mix, and they should not mix. That's what experience has shown us. And that the rabbis and politicians are products of the people in the society. Getting to it, if we have a political system, which, by the way, I don't think is the ideal political system, perhaps it should be replaced. I'm an advocate for the restoration of the Davidic monarchy. I think you guys are also on board with that. That also is a complicated question, but I would hope that we produce politicians and rabbis and perhaps even kosher leaders who are, I guess, more qualified than our current ones. I think that politicians don't carry any titles until they're elected, but rabbis have a title, and sometimes maybe that title has been cheapened. Not everybody, the rabbi is a sage or should be expressing an opinion with regards to certain things. Maybe I shouldn't be expressing opinions anyways. Be that as it may, I started getting excited when Rabbi Weiss was talking about a political party that was trying to establish talk and knowledge of this issue, and a party that promised to get the idea of building a temple rolling once elected, and even to have a minister to do such a thing. Now, I find that funny because we're sort of, I think he's late to the party. Do you recall the Zehut party platform? I think Rafi definitely remembers it. I think that's what
They didn't cross the threshold. That's exactly my point. That's exactly my point. It's not just having the ideology, but it's having the buy-in of the people. Yeah.
Actually, what happened that they didn't, he had made it, the last time he ran, I think he had dropped out because he negotiated a deal with Netanyahu that if Netanyahu was able to form a government, Feiglin would get some sort of portfolio. I forgot which one it was. Maybe they had named it, and some other things. Like he hedged his. I didn't think he hedged his bets. He basically took what was expected to get. He wouldn't have gotten Knesset representation that way. But either way, they failed in the elections. Netanyahu was unable to form a government that time around. Even Feiglin said it as much. So we used to be big supporters of Feiglin because of this and other positions that he was taking. I don't think he's given up on that. I think that maybe Rafi knows more about this, what he's plotting, and now he has more people on board. I also think that whatever Jonathan Pollard is planning to do or wants to do would also involve rebuilding the temple. My only question is, are all the like-minded political individuals working together in this regard? If let's say there are some within the current parties, even within the Likud, the so-called religious parties, which I think is an oxymoron, potential Zehut, whatever the Pollard party was going to call itself, if they are not unified in this regard, then they can all expect, once again, to not cross the threshold, certainly not to be forming a government or having any say in any respect. So we need to talk about this more. I think that it goes without saying that Jews should not vote for so-called political parties that do not have also this advocacy for rebuilding the temple. The fact that it hasn't until now, let's say the Haredi parties are quite large. They've always had undue influence, because that's a different political question. The Haredi parties have never pushed for anything. They usually get what they want, by the way, especially the Sephardic ones. You notice they get the building they want, they get to do what they want because they can topple government. I would have imagined that if they had demanded just proper Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount, we have all been there. You can't even pray on the Temple Mount like you would in any synagogue in the world. You can't even put on your tefillin. You can't wear a talis. You can't bring a prayer book even.
Well,
So-
it's very easy. It's very easy to get a building built, but if some Shasnik wants a building built and it costs $1 million shekels, they'll just throw it at him and build the building. But if you try to get Jewish prayer rights on the Temple Mount, the Yoamashit or the Israeli Attorney General will do everything she can to get you fired.
So
right?
But you've seen, and we have seen over the last 10 years, amazingly, do you remember we had to just walk around the Temple Mount? If you even were mouthing some prayers, they jump on you. Yet, somehow, they said, okay, now let the Jews pray out loud. Nothing happened. Who's the one who made the decision? I don't know how the deep state works. I don't know who's telling the police what to do. But we've seen it's very simple to just say, now let the Jews do this on the Temple Mount. And it happens. And nothing bad happened out of because of it. There's no results. We're able to do the mitzvahs. I don't see, just like I was pulled aside and given a stern warning by the police. They kind of intimidated me because I was on my knees once on the Temple Mount 6 years ago. But now people are falling down on their face, and that's totally fine. That's a mitzvah, by the way. So too, Rabbi Leo D was able to put on his tefillin on the Temple Mount the other day. Oh, they stopped him afterwards. But then another kid put on tefillin. What's wrong with putting on some tefillin? As long as we have Jews doing this and realizing, hey, we're only stopping ourselves. Our own political system is stopping us from doing this. The day we start bringing up Sifrei Torah and tefillin is the day before we are able to establish some sort of temple service. Yes, it'll probably start slowly before they even start building an altar, and it'll probably only involve wood or menachos, as you said, meal offerings. The point is that we have to get it going, and we have to get more Jews on board with this to realize we've only been stopping ourselves until this point, or at least people were producing ourselves. I think you mentioned the Yoamashit, who's the Attorney General, whoever. She is a Jew. She's misguided, but she's a Jew. And if we could somehow change her mind just a little bit and change everybody else's mind, get everybody else on board and trying to keep Judaism, then we will have a lot of progress.
Well, the best time to change the leadership's mind is right now during the election campaign season, or even in the days leading up to the election campaign season. Everybody is open, because if we could say, I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking for thousands and thousands of Israeli voters, you'll get their attention. And so that's what we should be davening for this Pesach. I really appreciate this conversation. I apologize that I have to go. But it was so nice to talk with you, Rabbi Grossman. And Rafi, thank you again for this conversation and for this podcast that you put out. Really, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much for coming.